The UK is not innocent.
The UK is not innocent. The UK is not innocent. The UK is not innocent. The UK is not innocent. The UK is not innocent. The UK is not innocent.
Kill the bill.
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 Remember how precious you are.
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 Remember to keep breathing.
Remember to keep breathing.
Remember to keep breathing.
Remember to keep breathing. Remember to keep breathing. Remember to keep breathing. Remember to keep breathing. Remember to keep breathing.
Remember to keep breathing. Remember to keep breathing.
Remember to keep breathing. Remember to keep breathing. Remember to keep breathing. Remember to keep breathing. Remember to keep breathing. Remember to keep breathing. Remember to keep breathing. Remember to keep breathing. Remember to keep breathing.
Remember to keep breathing. Remember to keep breathing.
I ask that we consider sand as a repository, both of feeling and of experience, of affect and of history in the Caribbean region. Here, sand links us unswervingly to place, to a particular landscape that bears traces of both connection and loss. I imagine it to be saturated with the presence of people who have walked on and carried it, but simultaneously empty. Empty.
Empty.
Empty of the archaeological and forensic traces that would testify to that presence. If water is the romantic metaphor that has irredeemably made its place in Caribbean and African diasporic studies, sand is the lesser embraced referent that returns us to the body's messy realities. Water washes, makes us clean. Sand gets inside our bodies, our things, in ways at once inconvenient and intrusive. It smooths rough edges, but also irritates, sticking to our bodies, folds and fissures. Vanessa Agard-Jones, What the Sands Remember.
You will learn how His Majesty ratifies these espousals. Probably this is done when he ravishes the soul by ecstasies, thus depriving it of its faculties. If the use of these were retained, I think the sight of its close vicinity to so mighty a sovereign would probably deprive the body of life. By the commands of the bridegroom, the doors of the mansions, and even those of the keep and of the whole castle are closed. For when he intends ravishing the soul, he takes away the power of speech. And although occasionally the other faculties are retained rather longer, no word can be uttered. Sometimes the person is at once deprived of all the senses, the hands and the body becoming as cold as if the soul had fled. Occasionally no breathing can be detected.
No breathing can be detected.
No breathing.
No breathing can be detected.
No breathing.
No breathing.
No breathing.
No breathing.
This supreme state of ecstasy never lasts long, but although it ceases, it leaves the will so inebriated and the mind so transported out of itself that for a day, or sometimes for several days, such a person is incapable of attending to anything but what excites the will to the love of God.
To the love of God.
The love of God.
Love of God.
The love of God.
The love of God.
The love of God.
The love of
The
God.
love of God.
The 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 love of God.
Although wide awake enough to this, she seems asleep as regards all earthly matters. Oh, when the soul wholly returns to itself, how abashed does it feel at having received this favor and how passionate are its desires of serving God in any way, asks for it. She considers it a great favor when God sends her this rapture in secret, for when others see it, the shame and confusion she feels are so great as somewhat to diminish her transport. Knowing the malice of the world, she fears her ecstasy will not be attributed to its proper cause, but may give rise to rash judgment instead of the praise due for it to God. Although this pain and distress are unavoidable, they seem to me to show a certain want of humility. For if she wished to be despised, what would she care? Saint Teresa de Avila treats of how God suspends the soul in prayer by a trance, ecstasy to rapture, which I believe are all the same thing. Great courage required to receive extraordinary favors from His Majesty.
Create no images of God, except the images that God has provided. They are everywhere. In everything, God is change. Seed to tree, tree to forest, rain to river, river to sea.
River to sea,
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 River to sea.
River to sea. Grubs to bees, bees to swarm. From one, many, from many, one. Forever uniting, growing, dissolving,
dissolving,
forever changing.
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 The universe is God's self-portrait. Octavia Butler, Parable of the Sower.
The rivers carried our blood, our bodies, our sex, our faith, our magic. Because life was treated so flippantly, the souls too found itself sloughed off without ceremony, falling between the planks of the deck, all matted up with flesh and hair. All matted up with flesh and hair. Flesh and hair and blood and juices, saliva, screams, nails, excrement and dust, clinging on to something that used to mean sacred. Life. That used to mean sacred. Life. That used to mean sacred. Love. Life. Ecology. So that dust travelled in the rains, and thus the rivers, and thus the oceans, and thus the shores, and thus the dust, and thus the air, and thus the rains, over and 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 over. We cycled.
cachoeira, to the plantations and the houses and the graves, to the auction block and the road and the dust and the sand, to the good death sisterhood, down the Gambia, the Volta, into Nakole, River Densu, the Niger, the Congo, the Lisbeth, the Limpopo, the Val, Orinoco, Essequibo, Casapuera, Rio Negro, Cataniropo, Amazon, Rio Escondido, Rio Osama, Rio Grande, Mississippi, Ohio, Missouri, Illinois, Alabama, Thames, Mersey, Clyde, Ebro, Tagus, Douro, Rhone, Loire. Yemaya takes our dust, the spongy remnants of our ancestors, and makes a mud thick with vengeance and pain. And it was the mud. It was the mud.
The mud.
The mud.
It was the mud.
The mud.
It was the mud that made us whole again.
Whole again.
Whole again.
Whole again. Whole again.
Whole again.
Although the Thames was muddy, polluted and rich with feces, old boot leather, this intended bodies large and small, mold, moss, silt, feathers, and all other manner of waste in which new life thrived. The vine found its way into the covenant. It had come a long way across the Atlantic, adapting to a far from the traditional meal of plankton, kelp, and fish droppings, so that the vine that arose now was quite a different being to the one that had departed so many moons ago. It swayed, questing side to side, and up and up,
And up and up.
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 and up and up, and up and up, and up and up, and up and up.
And up and up.
From the sludge of water to the sludge of the riverbank it coursed, and then cracks of an imperfect wall, and on and up,
And on and up.
and on and up,
And on and up.
and on and up,
On and up.
and on and up, following the field of faith. It found a damp silt through which light might penetrate like a poker,
Like a poker.
like a poker.
Like a poker.
The vine slunk into a room, keeping to the shadows, undulating in time, with the inhalation and the exhalation of her fitfully sleeping breath.
Sleeping breath.
Sleeping breath.
Sleeping breath. The stench of devotion was palpable in the air, so thick it could taste her already, and it had been so long since it had dined with a lover. slowly, but with certainty, savoring every intensification in air density, the closer it got to the sleeping woman whose face was covered with an old dusty Bible, pages fluttering slightly with each breath. Contact. Just the slightest hint of touch, tendril to flesh, ankle already blooming with goosebumps, anticipating the sensations to come.
Erupting tides from the rivers and our thighs, and our fears, bodies returning to rocks, to wood and leaf, pool and crustacean. My sister braids umbilical cords to the next life unbound, and the musk of her sex and her sweat and her menstrual blood fill my amniotic sac, so that I might not forget where I came from, might not forget that this is just one life of many, that I might remember I am never alone.
Alone.
I'm never alone.
I'm never alone.
Alone,
I'm never alone.
alone,
I'm never alone.
I'm never alone.
I'm never alone.
I'm never alone.
the earth split to birth the shoot. From nothing but nutrients and intention, plant life for miles around had strained and strove and labored to birth this one green shoot. A middle finger reaching to the stars, stars where it might one day take root. The shoot came to life hungry,
Hungry.
Hungry.
hungry
Hungry.
for the earth and fluids, light and warm, and it quested about surreptitiously, unsure of predators that might be lurking, but driven out of under by lust and thirst, for which
It could not at first account.
It started though not asexual. They sucked and fucked and ate and shat from all orifices top to bottom, and the vine first experienced a joining with slime for lubrication. And more slime ejaculated. And the shoot found it tepid and bland and intriguing. The shoot did not reach vinehood until it experienced the complex communion with the densu. After seeking blessings from the river deity Ayensu and her husband Kwekumoni of the western Simpa Lagoon, the two welcomed the shoot into their riverbed and taught it how to truly pleasure a woman, and thus to truly worship their waters. The vine learned how to travel by water, exchanging nutrients and knowledge from the river weeds and finally their cousins, the weeds of the sea. At open sea, they invited the vine to join their amorphous floating cities, rich and packed and peculiar, with orgies of interspecies ululations. And ecstatic conflagrations of mulch. Yet Vine had a mission, a message born of blood and unbearable memory. A knowing that had forced it from thought, from intention, from soil and red dust. A message of knives that contained 1,000 generations of screaming. Eclipsed by a single textbook. And once again, the vine hungered. It followed that hunger to a mouth, and upriver to a city, and by night it found a wall, and by morning it feasted anew.
The devotee in waiting woke drenched in her own sin. She had in fact climaxed so many times that the mattress was soaked through. She had no memory of what transpired, or from whence the ecstasy had come. She knew only that she had been ravished. She had been taken and gifted anew, left open and weeping, with strange words on her tongue, a tongue familiar yet unknown. Memories her bones had tried so hard to forget. They would say she was a heathen. She panicked, panting and hysterical. They would say they always knew a Negro could not be a holy woman, wholly impure in her manner and her being, her aesthetic, her very skin, drenched in blackest sin. Yet she found no culprit in her chambers, nor any evidence of entry. Naught but a pile of earth upon her crisp white pillow, rich and dark as her fleshful, immorality. She whimpered and wept, whilst inside her a seed took root, and in her mouth the taste of home.
Heads wrapped in iridescent futures we called. Our wombs afire with drumming, responding to the call. We ate and bled, and in sinewy life leaped down our calves.
Muscled and scarred and ancient.
It had been generations since we bled, and our Achilles almost forgot the sensation of hot stickiness, of earth and life incarnate, kissing the backs of our heels. Not too much now, not too much. Save enough for the contouring. Our heads are wrapped in iridescent futures that whip and crack and chatter, catching sun and sea and vision. And our sister quakes in fear. Surrounded by white cotton our fingers have known since mud. Surrounded by a purity wholly insincere. We call and we quake and we come just a little, so that our lover's seed might set course
and
bring the message back to us.
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 Back to us.
Vineling trembled a little as it fought gastric acids for survival, as it craved light, air, and water sights to behold. But it knew it had to wait until the waters inside her were echoed by the waters all around. So it sent shocks up her esophagus and Scotch bonnets at regular intervals to spur her on towards the ships, to follow blood trails which never dissipate, and dust trails which only sediment and transform, and bone trails who join the clans of the mighty as trophies and totems until they are called home.
using coins she had reparated from the prayer box. She knew this mission to be of holy intent, and so left no word of her departure. In the days she was plagued with rolling nausea and vomit, frequent prayers into the Atlantic. And finally,
The Sargasso Sea.
the Sargasso Sea. At night, she was overcome with ecstasies, pungent and all-encompassing. They brooked no argument, and she woke feeling cleansed, light and malleable, so that wishless
her
body, bloated as though with child, it also evanesced a little,
a little,
a little,
a little,
a little.
a little.
And when the ship was caught in storms and thrust deep down to the belly of the swell, she floated a few inches above the deck floor and felt no impact, nor any fear. For she knew now her sisters waited, bleeding and coming, in perfect synchronicity, as she carried the message home, 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 home,
The night the waters turned translucent and so warm, they steamed in the darkness, emitting a throbbing glow that could only mean God was watching.
And wished not to miss a moment
To shadows. The devotee propelled her body onto the deck. Her fingernails were broken and bloody from clinging on to bits of splintering ship, for she could no longer walk. She could no longer walk.
She could no longer walk.
She could no longer walk.
she can no longer walk.
She could no longer walk. Its holes aground. Rather, she floated, her head loose and self-assured, swaying only a little in the cross currents of night air, as though the entire ship had sunk without her notice. And now they swam in place of breathing.
She looked into the darkness and saw a tree line beyond human sight, and a beach and a reef. So she overflowed the bow, and starfish rose to caress her heels and to imbibe the blood and cum that had already started flowing, as the drumming rocked her womb and her breasts grew heavy with potential.
Her breaths grew heavy
With
with potential.
And even her buttocks spread invitingly, anticipation leaking just a little.
Just a little,
Just a little.
just a little,
A little.
just a little.
Just a little.
The devotee bit her lip to hold it back and moved faster across the waves.
ancestors and descendants alike gathered to greet the new arrival. And they held her as she birthed the vine. And they held each other as it sucked and worshipped. And they held the dirt as it trembled with the message so long awaited, the message of memories.
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 The message of futures.
The message of futures.
The message of futures.
The message of futures.
The message of home.
The message of home.
The oceans carried our blood.
The oceans carried our blood.
Our memories.
Our memories.
Our agony.
Our agony.
Our sap.
Our sap.
Our salve.
Our salve.
Our ecstasy.
Our ecstasy.
And our becoming.
And our becoming.
are leaving the hold. Make your way to the landing and descend downstairs.